our favorite all-time guests. Great insight, great information, and great entertainment all at the same time. And we're talking economics here.
Yeah,
it's economics.
The bow tie economist,
yes,
Elliot Eisenberg.
Elliot Eisenberg. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this. I'm going to turn the interview over to Dave Floor. We have Greg Larson in studio with us too. He's brought some real estate data, and he might throw some of that and see what Elliot's reaction is to that. Because Elliot, as I turn this over to Dave. You've been following the Dakotas for quite some time now.
Hey, Elliot, you there?
About 2.5 years ago to the Bakken area. A number of other times to other parts of the state. But ever since then, I've been absolutely fascinated by it. I love the area, and I'm itching to get back there, to go to Williston or Dickinson.
Yeah. Elliot, you told me you're going to be in South Dakota shortly?
Yes. Next week, I'm going to be in Pierre. So I will be nearby.
Yeah. Well, that's a short car ride.
Not close enough, but close.
It's a short car ride.
Anything within 6 hours is local.
Yeah.
Spoken like a Midwesterner, not like here in the East Coast. You know, Baltimore's 50 miles north and Richmond's 100 miles south or 120 miles south.
Yeah. All right. Well, Elliot, you know what? I think we're just going to jump into the really important stuff here right away. And on your blog, I believe last week, you had a little story about the best places to be during a zombie invasion.
Yes.
And Pennsylvania was the worst place, is that correct?
Northeastern Pennsylvania was the worst. Pennsylvania's pretty bad in general, but Northeast is bad. The basic notion here is that zombies are going to appear in large communities first.
Okay.
New York, Los Angeles, whatever. And Northeastern Pennsylvania is close to a lot of big cities.
Okay.
Like Bakersfield, California, same sort of thing. You know, when you're near a bunch of big places, it's bad. If you want to live in a big city, I guess Boise could be a good one because there's not many other cities nearby.
Okay, yeah, right. You're kind of out there, yeah. So we're pretty good in Bismarck here then.
I think you are pretty good.
Yeah,
you didn't rank number 1 or 2. Montana and rural Montana and rural Nevada were the number 1 and 2 states.
Okay.
But yes, you're pretty good. But again, you're okay. But you should actually get more rural than where you are now.
So Jordan, Montana, or Malta, Montana, probably two of the safest places in the world.
Where Joe is very familiar with. Joe is from Montana originally, Elliot. So.
Okay. But anywhere, I guess, east of Billings and west of North Dakota, that area is probably the best. I would
hide. I don't know why a zombie would go there. So yeah, and
I'm sorry.
No, well, and apparently, so our economy should be able to withstand the zombie invasion, is what you're saying.
No, you certainly should in North Dakota. Yes.
Okay.
But kidding aside, the model that was employed to figure this out was very, very similar, or really identical to the notion of any epidemic that would happen to us. So smallpox, chickenpox, measles, mumps, Ebola, God forbid. These same models would be equally applicable. So, again, if Ebola comes, you guys are pretty safe where you are. I think you should be happy.
Elliot,
you've made everybody here happy.
Here's the deal, Elliot. I totally missed the whole point of this zombie exercise. I thought this was a consumption model. I thought the whole point of the zombie thing was that that zombies actually understood supply side. That's why they would be interested in big populations because that would be where they would have the most resources to consume. So I totally missed this whole zombie exercise.
I agree with you, but that's generally how it is with all these other terrible things too. So you're right on.
Right?
I'm going to give you the title of economist for the day, and you'll take my job.
So they go where the brains are at, right, Jim?
Yeah.
They go where the brains are at.
Whenever there's no brains.
The flesh or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, now did you? You were going to come up with some Easter Bunny stats also. Maybe we'll hit that the next break or something to start off with.
I do have some. I absolutely have some data on Easter.
All right, we got a couple minutes. What do you want to tell us about the economy right now? We got like 2 minutes.
The economy right now is a little bit weaker than we had hoped, objectively. I think looking back, say 6 or 8 months ago, we would have thought that Q4 and Q1 would have been stronger than they turned out to be. Q4 turned in a 2.2% GDP growth, or somewhere around 2%, somewhere around there. Pretty lackluster after a 4.6 in Q2 and a 5% growth in Q3. And then Q1, the wheels really fell off. So maybe we're going to get a 1% growth rate in Q1 annualized. But don't put too much into this. There were a lot of one-off factors that were really bad in Q1, namely rotten weather through much of the Midwest and the Northeast, Some not as bad as last year with the polar vortex, but pretty crummy. And two, the West Coast port strike in the port of LA and Long Beach did surprisingly severe damage to import and export activity. And that shaved off. You get the weather shaved off a quarter point, 0.3 of a point, 0.4 of a point. The coastal strikes knocked off another 0.2 of a point. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So the underlying strength of the economy is better, but it certainly is a bit of a dip in this last in the Q4 and Q1. Q2 should start to get a little better as the dollar stops strengthening and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Well, all right. Well, we'll go into the break with that, and Dave will bring us back with more and maybe some Easter Bunny stats.
Yeah. Awesome. All right.
Right after this with Elliot Eisenberg on North Dakota Housing Network.
Right now, 39.
Get the traffic and weather information you need anytime on Super Talk 1270 and online at supertalk1270.com.
And welcome back to the studio here at the North Dakota Housing Network. Dave, we are talking to Elliot Eisenberg. So talk about brains. We were talking about brains in the last segment. We definitely have brain power here on the air with us.
Yeah, well, we have the bow-tie economist, Elliot Eisenberg. Graphs and Laughs.net. Now, Elliot, how does somebody subscribe to your daily blog?
The best way to subscribe, go to www.econ70, the number 7 and number 0.com. Just go there and sign up. Or, better yet, text the word bowtie to the number 22828. That's it. Bowtie to 22828.
There you go.
And Elliot, if somebody wants to hire you as a speaker, you're a phenomenal speaker. How else would they, and any of the organizations out there that want to bring in an economist, how would they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, and there they can send me an email directly from there. That's the best way. Go to econ70, econ70.com, and it says send Elliot and Eisenberg an email. And
just let me endorse. I got Elliot's blog, comes over my cell phone every day.
Yep.
Some of the most insightful, up-to-date stuff in less than 70 words. If you're somebody who doesn't have all day to read Bloomberg, to
Wall Street
Journal, Elliot will keep you in the loop on the big topics of the day in 70 words or less every day, and then throw some cool things at you that are really funny and entertaining.
Zombie invasion. And then, Elliot, you were going to get us some stats on the Easter Bunny. So what did you come up with?
Yeah, but there are a couple different things. I'm not sure where to begin, but Easter bunnies cause economists, Easter causes economists a great deal of misery because Easter is a moving holiday, right?
Okay.
This is unusual ever since the year, I 325, and the Council of Nicaea. They said Easter would always fall on the Sunday after the first full moon in spring. If I got that right. So it moves anywhere from end of March to end of April. So it makes forecasting for economists hard, so we don't like Easter. But that having been said, I thought you need to know how much it costs to raise a bunny every year. It costs about $1,000. So I think they're much cheaper to eat than actually to party with. The other big deal is how do you eat the Easter bunny? And they've done some surveys on this, chocolate Easter bunnies, this is. And it turns out 89% of people think you should eat the ears first.
Oh, okay.
Jim's an ear guy.
I would go with that.
Surprised. I kind of thought the body first, and you save the face and the ears for last, but whatever, I don't know. Easter shopping, a lot of money in Easter shopping. This is big money. $5 billion for the economy is spent on chocolate and so on and so forth. So it matters. It's $5 billion is bigger than the GDP of many small nations.
Wow.
Elliot, let's talk about the Easter labor force. So what does this do for chickens? And do they get time off then in this peak season for chicken in their delivery of produce?
Oh, you're harsh. Well, Easter eggs have gotten very expensive. Eggs have almost doubled in price since the year 2005. This is pretty mean. A dozen eggs back then cost $1.20 in January 2005. Now they're on average $2.10. Wages have not gone up nearly that much. So the Easter is exerting a much larger cost on the checkbooks of the average American.
See, and I can only attribute that to...
I'm kind of anti-Easter as a result of this.
I can only attribute that to a low labor force participation among chickens during Easter.
There you go.
That's driving the cost of eggs up because the supply's down.
That is insightful. Oh, my gosh, yes.
He's going to use that, Joe.
Are these free-range chickens or in big cages? We're not going to go there, right?
Put that one in the blog next year.
You can use that one, Elliot.
I have your permission. Thank you very much. So yeah, Easter's a great holiday, but again, there's all kinds of, you won't believe this, but there are all kinds of models that economists employ to deal with this moving holiday problem. There are huge statistical packages that solve this for us, but no joke.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's get a little more serious. A couple things that probably affect North Dakota, and I'm taking this from recent blogs you've done in the past month here. But the March 23rd blog, you talked about oil inventories and how they were the highest since 1985. You talked about capacity and whatnot. You know, the oil storage capacity is a big deal, obviously, for North Dakota. So how's that going to affect things going forward?
It's gotten worse, actually, since that blog. The last 3 or 4 statements from the Energy Information Agency have come out, and inventories have continued to rise. We're not running out of space yet by any stretch of the imagination, but we're starting to think about that problem. In Oklahoma, we're getting close. In the Midwest, there's 50-60% capacity. If we do run out of space, this would be very, very bad for energy prices, because the only market that would exist would be the spot market, and prices would do very, very badly. There was hope earlier this week. There was some information coming out that seemed to suggest that production had peaked, and that this pulling in rig counts falling nationally from about 1,800 to about 1,200 was beginning to show a reduction in production. But then the inventory numbers came out, and price of oil fell like $4 or $5 a barrel.
So what does that mean directly for us in North Dakota? I mean, how does that all translate to our local market?
Bad news. This is bad news. I mean, you want oil prices to be as high as they possibly can be, all else equal. I mean, for North Dakota, as an oil-producing state, you want to screw, pardon my language, the rest of the country and have us pay $5 a gallon for gas. It would be booming for North Dakota. Maryland, where I live, we're not an energy-producing state. We don't care about North Dakota. But you want high prices. And the problem is, I think the export ban is a major, major problem. This is something that's within your control and something you can lobby hard for to try and change. But the price differential between Brent, North Sea, European oil, and West Texas Intermediate crude is $5 or $6 a barrel. Now, in the Bakken, you guys aren't picking up at the wellhead. You aren't getting $50 a barrel. But that differential of $4 or $5 merely exists because we cannot export oil, raw crude oil, and we should. And this is a congressional issue, and Congress can change this rule. And if they did it, it would raise the price of oil domestically, and it would make exploration and production more viable. So and this was passed back in the 70s, after OPEC oil shock 1 with the Yom Kippur War in 73. We were short oil. We never dreamt we'd be in the situation we are now, but this rule has to change. And you're one of the key states that can push this with your senators and so on.
When do you see them based? The next question North Dakotans are asking is from a guy like yourself is, when would you project oil prices returning in the event that doesn't happen?
Oil prices are probably the chance of seeing oil at $100 a barrel, I think, is very, very limited going forward. That's a very, very long-term problem. Well, we've got the situation right now, and we'll get to this, is tremendous amount of supply and not a lot of demand. Now, Saudi Arabia traditionally has always been the country that says, oh, my gosh, price is falling, we'll cut supply. And by doing that, they jack up the price, and there's equilibrium at whatever price they want. And the Saudis could, tomorrow morning, close the taps, reduce production from 10 million barrels or 8 million barrels a day, drop it by 3 million barrels a day, and the price would go right back up to $100. I mean, literally, it's that fast. They've decided as a policy decision not to do that, and they want to really hurt the high-cost producers. And the high-cost producers, they think, and the world thinks, are you guys in the Bakken and the guys fracking in the Permian and the Eagle Ford and in the Niobrara Shale. Those are the 4 areas that are producing the most new oil in the world, 3 or 5 million barrels a day over the last several years. And people think they're the high-cost producers. Now, we'll see. There's been some rationalization in the oil industry. BP, not BP, Shell just announced buying yesterday buying a huge British oil explorer. There's lots of reorganizations going on. Some firms are declaring bankruptcy. Whiting Oil, I think the biggest producer up there, has gotten some more capital. This is going to be a much longer shakeout than I thought. So what we're going to have to see to get prices up is really going to be world demand. World demand has to start rising at some point, or production has to decline. But production hasn't been declining at all. Any indication of it yet? It'll probably start a bit. But you would like to see world demand. So China growing faster, Europe growing faster, Japan growing faster, Russia, Brazil, and so on. But they're not. So this may take a while. The other thing to keep in mind is if oil hits 50, 60, 70, 80 bucks a barrel again, then not only will you guys be in business, but so will the Canadian tar sands guys. And they're also chipping away at their production costs. So the ultimate price, the highest production oil, probably is the tar sands oil. Next comes you. So they're out of business. Nothing new coming from the tar sands. But once they've already built the stuff in the tar sands, it costs $10, $20 billion to build each one of those big plants up there in Alberta. They don't stop. They're 10 or 20-year projects. Your guys, by contrast, can come and go. So what you see now in North Dakota, which is very interesting in Texas, is people drilling a well and then capping. So they wait, and now they're saying, well, it's as if we have this reserve of oil, and as soon as the price hits $60 or whatever it is, the pump jacks will start going. So it's hard to see high prices. It really is. I'm sorry for the bad news.
Yeah.
Well, no, but we always appreciate the
we like the truth here.
The truth.
Yeah, well, it hurts. In this case, it really hurts.
Yeah. Okay, we got about 1 minute, Elliot. Let me ask a very simple question. We talk about oil storage capacity. Really, if we increase the capacity to store the oil, would that make any difference at all?
It would make a little bit of a difference, but it would not fundamentally alter the story. That's not the solution.
Yeah,
that really is not. I wouldn't. No, I mean, doing nothing is worse. That does nothing, but it's not going to alter the supply-demand imbalance. So we'll still end up at the same place just another 6 months later or 3 months later.
Okay. All right. Okay, we got to take a break, Elliot, and everybody, we will be back with the bow-tie economist, Elliot Eisenberg, when we return on Dakota Housing Network.
Right now, 39.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own Super Talk 1270.
Okay, we are back on the Dakota Housing Network. Dave Floor, Joe Sheehan, Greg Larson, and our guest, Elliot Eisenberg, the bow-tie economist. Elliot, again, how can we get to your daily blog, Econ 70? Tell us how to do that and how to sign up and all that.
The easiest way is to take your smartphone out and type the word bow tie and send it to the number 22828.
All right.
Alternatively, go to my website, www.econ70.com, and sign up right there.
Okay. It's a great blog, folks, like we said earlier.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
If it's you want just a little bit of economic news daily, Elliot will give you the most important stuff and put it in 70 words or less.
And the other thing, too, is if you're looking for a great speaker, Elliot will come to the Dakotas. He's going to be down in Pierre, he said, here in a little bit. And,
yeah, we've like you said, you've been up in the Williston area, the Bakken. We've had you at our North Dakota Housing Conference a couple of years ago, and so you love us here in North Dakota, which is just great. We're glad you're.
But
you know, absolutely.
We never do this guy a favor and bring him in July, though. We always bring him in January and February.
Yeah, Elliot. I tell you what, we're going to follow up a little bit on the oil question. Greg here has a question for you, and then Greg's got some real estate info, and he wants your take on that. So we're going to turn it over to Greg here for a couple questions.
So, Elliot, my first one, I'm still trying to wrap my head around where zombies go, and if they're going to be around Philadelphia, I'm just thinking it's because they prefer Italian, but that could just be me. I just heard the other day that the U.S. military and emergency oil reserves are down. Now, if we have this surplus in the state and in the nation, and we're not exporting it, why would those reserves be down?
I have no idea, and if they are down, the government should be strategically refilling our strategic petroleum reserve, or the Department of Defense's coffers, but reserve tanks or something. Absolutely, it would be a slight fill up, if you will, no pun intended, to the price.
So we're debating it. That is it because the government's broke and Fannie and Freddie need to make more money or something like that would be able to do this, or
I couldn't tell you. I mean, Fannie and Freddie are not doing badly, but they're not going to be making money like they used to. That's for sure. But the government should be at these low prices. The Chinese are increasing their strategic petroleum reserves right now. They're buying because they see it's a low price and they figure it's a great chance to buy a bunch of millions of barrels.
So the answer is
they want to get a reserve up to I think a month. I think is their plan.
So another thing we should be talking to our senators about.
Yes. Absolutely. Based on this data, Greg, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
And anything to increase demand, whatever you can do to increase demand would be a good thing.
All right. There we got our marching orders from Elliot today.
And the other thing about the oil is if we get rid of the ban, which is hard, but if we do it, it will raise the wellhead prices here in the U.S., but it will not, believe it or not, will not raise the price of gasoline. And that's bizarre, but true. And that's because in the U.S. you can export refined oil, but not crude oil. And refined oil is based on the world price because everyone can export it and import it. And therefore, getting rid of the ban will raise the domestic price and slightly lower the world price, and thus slightly lower gasoline prices.
Okay.
Wow.
This is an unambiguous win for us.
This is like a win-win for everybody. It sounds like. Is this just politics?
Imagine a situation where we can increase oil production and lower
the refiners.
They
don't want this in the worst way, and they have a huge incentive not to do it. So they're plying Congress with money and booze and drugs.
The refiners.
I'm kidding. The refiners, yeah. Shell, BP, Conoco, Phillips, the Chevron, Texaco's gone, but Mobil, these guys, they're the ones who love the status quo. They want to keep it because they're making the difference. The difference is called the crack spread. It's the price they buy oil from crude oil, and then they crack it, which is refining it, and they sell it as distilled products. And that gap is big, and they're happy, and they're loving it, all else equal.
Okay, this sounds like a job for NAR, Greg.
I think so. Yeah. So we have some statistics I'd like to have you talk about. I took a snapshot of April 9th, 2015, 14, 13, and 12 of the Bismarck-Mandan market area, which pretty much is a 100-mile radius around us that we market predominantly in, and took just what's active, what's for sale, what's waiting to close, what's been taken off the market, or what is pending, just ready to sell or close. 2012, that total number on April 9th was 569. In 13, it was 589. In 14, it's 663. And this year, April 9th, 2015, it is 717. Does that speak to you?
Existing inventory.
That's housing. That's not inventory. That's housing that is actually, well, the inventory would be, I can give you those numbers. In 12, it's 215, 273, 379, and 436. We're taking, in those first numbers I gave you, we're taking those that are getting ready to sell as well, not just what's for sale. So what's for sale, but it's the same trend across the board.
Yep, going up.
Yep.
And how many months of inventory do you have right now at 476? Well, of course, it varies by how many sales you got, obviously, I guess.
If I take 450 and over out of that, we have about 35 days.
35 days, got it. That's a little bit on the, wow, that's pretty low inventory.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, normally it's 4 or 5 months, 5 months historically or something like that. That's what it normally is. That's a sort of a fair market, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. So, Elliot, we see, Greg brought this up, I think, because, we've heard that the housing market's going to be down in Bismarck or, North Dakota, period. And, these numbers are kind of saying, well, at least in the Bismarck service area, so to speak, it's not. Nope. Do you see that the economy in North Dakota is diversified enough that, the oil isn't going to make as huge an impact as some people maybe think and what the national media is saying?
Well, I think you're right. But North Dakota really is two states. You've got the center of the state, Minot and Bismarck. You've got the east coast of the state, Grand Forks right? I mean,
Fargo.
and then you've the biggest city, Fargo, and you've got the West, Williston, Dickinson, and so on. At the eastern end, the oil impacts are trivial. I mean, Fargo's on fire. Grand Forks not quite as hot, but doing well. They got schools. They're a very diversified economy out there, software and so on and so forth. They're very healthy, very strong, and very good. All right, Bismarck has got the state capital. You got some prisons, I guess, too. No school because you traded off the school for the prisons. You can't have everything, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're okay also. Minot's a little less well. They've got probably a little bit more problem because they're a little more oil-based than you are just because of geographic location. And then when you get to places like Williston and Dickinson, that's where you're going to see the impacts come first because the level of diversification there is very, very low. Much like in Texas, you're seeing not really very negative impacts in Houston. And even though Houston's the center of oil in Texas and the country, arguably, you may argue with that one, but you get my point. Mm-hmm. Oil is not that big a deal in Houston. It's 5-6% of city product and jobs and so on. So it doesn't matter much. But if you go to Midland or Cotulla, which are the centers, the hubs of the Permian of the Eagle Ford, or parts of Corpus Christi and so on, Victoria, I guess, really is worse. Those cities have been more harmed. It's harder to get a loan. It's harder to turn a mortgage over, to refi a building. It isn't terrible yet because they're hanging in there. But that's where the effects will be felt first.
So Elliot, speaking as an economist, just going back to the background of economics. I mean, the boom bust cycle has a lot of historical precedents in it in terms of minerals, mining, natural resources. What is it that North Dakota maybe should take from the lessons of Western Montana, Wyoming, California, where you had these natural resource boom bust cycles happen? And is this one different? How is it different, or is it the same? And how is it exactly the same?
Oh, they really are the same. It's pretty classic. I mean, you think back, every time we've had an oil bust, it's been preceded by very high prices of oil. So the late 70s were the decades from 73 to 83, very high prices of oil, which led to a tremendous amount of oil exploration and production, which led to a bust. And now we have the same thing. We've had a number of years of $100 per barrel oil, and suddenly technology improves by pushing it hard, and we have an oil bust. So what you've got to keep in mind, and what you've got to keep in mind, is never to assume that the revenues you have in a boom will persist. So this notion you had several years ago, luckily it failed, that the state government, you would abolish property taxes and the state would compensate the counties for the loss of revenue. I mean, wow, that was a really dumb idea because that's making long-term policy based on a boom. And as long as what the state and the counties and cities should do is take this money that they get when they have these booms and spend it on one-off things. Oh, we'll build a rec center. Oh, we'll build something that we would have wanted to have built, but we could never have done it otherwise. But you should not use that money to increase something in the budget that's year after year after year after year. But if you do build something like that, make sure you put in a lot of money. So we're going to fund it for 5 or 6 years, whatever the social service is, so that when the inevitable bust comes, you can take from that rainy day fund for that line item in the budget to cover the cost.
So
let your budget grow.
Is it technically a bust?
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer because I don't know how to define a bust. But I would say yes. I would really say this is. I think the longer it persists, the more clearly it becomes a bust. No one thinks that. Think back to 08, 09. That was a very brief bust, but it was so short. It didn't have any real impact unless you were an employee or owner of a oil exploration and production firm, obviously. But now you're seeing dramatic changes in the industry. Halliburton trying to buy Baker Hughes and so on. This is a sign of an industry that's trying to cut costs everywhere and trying to rationalize desperately. So I would say if we're not in the bust territory, we're on the verge of bust by duration. It's already getting to be a long time.
All right. Well, we're going to take our last break, and we'll be back with Elliot Eisenberg.
Right now, 45.
Sean Hannity, weekdays at 2, only on Super Talk 1270.
All right, we are back on the Dakota Housing Network with Joe, Greg, and Dave. And our guest today, the bow-tie economist, Elliot Eisenberg. And Elliot, once again, how do we sign up for your daily blog, Econ 70?
2 quick ways to sign up. One, if you have your cell phone, smartphone handy, just spell the word bowtie and text it to the number 22828. Again, bowtie to 22828. Or go to our website, www.econ70.com, and sign up there. There'll be a place that says blog sign up, and just do it.
All right, super.
You'll hear from me, 70 words or less, no graphs, no charts, no ads, no links, no photos.
There you go. That's all you need to know. Simple information from one of the great minds that's ever been on this radio show. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, Elliot, that's the one time we didn't give you a compliment today.
Yeah.
Because by the standard of the regular minds that are here, it's just not that high up.
Well, Elliot, you probably didn't know this, but you are on an episode of, and today it's a special one because it's 3 dumb guys asking a smart guy questions.
Oh my God!
It's a special episode.
It's kind of remedial radio.
Yeah.
You're making me really feel that North Dakota loves me.
We do. Elliot, I got a question for you. This comes from your blog you did on March 24th about moving in the country. Back in 2013, you had in there 11.5% of the population moved. That was down from I believe it was a peak of 20% probably in 1985 or 1995 or something.
21%, something like that.
Yeah, and what people think, well, gosh, you should go to a place and just stay there and make it your home. But moving in an economy, people moving is really important. Of course, we saw that in North Dakota because we needed workers and people moved here. What's the effect of this low rate of people moving? Is it because of the recession, and then what's the effect on an economy of a low rate?
Partly the recession. Absolutely, people were locked. People who owned houses and they were upside down on their house couldn't get away. They had to weigh the benefit of moving against the cost of trashing their FICO score and their credit rating and not being able to borrow money for 7 years or 6 years or 3 years, depending on the type of credit, 3 years. And that was harmful. But more generally, think of moving as a more dramatic example of changing jobs. If you stay in one job your whole life, you're unlikely to get that great job, make more money. But by changing jobs over your career, you can get a better job, a higher paying job, a more interesting job, a job with more responsibility, whatever it is that floats your boat and you need to have to be satisfied. Moving is just a little more of that. You're getting a job that's further away than it was in the city. It may be in the state or 100 or 200 miles away, but you're moving probably for a job. And as people move for jobs, it's good for the economy. It raises the incomes of the people who move. It also more productively uses the people. Let's say you've been in a job for 10 years and now you have a whole lot of cool skills, but your job is still an entry-level position. I'm making this up, but you get the idea. But you can earn more money doing more productive work and being a bigger contributor to our economy by moving. So it's important. But the problem is, as you said earlier, it's down, in part because of the recession and also in part demographics. Boomers just aren't likely to move for a job. The youngest boomers are 51 years old. People that age just don't do a lot of moving. It's more the youngsters, the pre-homeowners, the renters, the college kids who do a lot. And demographically, as a percentage of the entire population, they're not so big. They're going to grow again. So it should bump up. But I'd like to see that number go up again. It's a sign of economic vitality.
Yeah, no, we had at our housing conference this year, we had a fellow, Ken Gronberg. He's a demographer. And he talked about the increase in the population of the younger people and how that's going to have an effect on the economy. And Greg was there, and he really just said, "Hey, the United States is set up for great things in the future."
Yeah,
because of that. Do you agree?
It really is. I wouldn't say great. That's an exact. I wouldn't go that far. I'd say good. Our population growth is not going to be what it was back in the 60s and 70s, and labor force growth. The boomers were a huge cohort on a base that was very small. Now the population's much bigger, and even though the millennials as a grouping are bigger than the boomers were, as a percentage of the overall population, they're not quite as big because the country now is 300 million people. Back in 1950, it was 150 million people. So the boomers had a bigger percentage influence. But yes, if you look at other developed countries, Germany, France, England, Italy, Japan, China, these countries are either all flat or declining in population. Russia, we are, by contrast, continuing to grow at around 1% a year. We are very, very fortunate. We are not going to have the declining population, aging population problems that most other democracies or Western industrialized countries have, including China. So we're, demographically speaking, over the next 50, 60 years, way better than other countries are.
Well, with the other countries like that declining, what's the how about us exporting our products to these countries? I mean, they're not going to be buying as much. What kind of problems are we going to see there?
Correct. So, yeah, GDP, you can think of GDP as being composed of two things: number of people who work and how productive the workers are who work. So, let's say we have 5 guys each making 2 radios a year. We have 10 radios. That's our GDP. Now, the next year, we have 5 guys making 3 radios each. Well, 15 radios. GDP jumps by 50%. Europe faces at a minimum, a labor force that shrinks because the population is flat to declining everywhere. So this is a real problem for GDP growth in Europe, and I expect GDP growth in Europe to be very lackluster for a good long time because of this population problem. China too. So yes, they will import less. Their economy won't have the vigor it did 30, 40 years ago. So it will certainly hurt us on the export side. We have to become more competitive and better pricing and more ruthless in some shape or way or form to try and gain market share out there.
Okay. Are there countries that we should be focusing on to export our products? Here, obviously, the big thing is agriculture, exporting our food. Is there countries we should be
looking to places like Asia? Look at places like India and see what it is they want. They're a growing economy. They're 7% in GDP growth. They're much smaller than China, but their growth is very good. They have a good prime minister in there now, Modi, who seems business friendly. Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. These are large countries. They don't grow a lot of wheat up there and soybeans up there. They grow a lot of rice, but you don't make a lot of rice. It's not a problem. But these are booming populations with still large population growth. 80 million people, 100 million people. This is much bigger than Europe. They're further away, but we have to focus on the Asia side of the world now to compensate for the declining importance economically of Europe over the next 30, 40 years.
Elliot, we got about 3 minutes left in the show here before we wrap it up. I want to thank you, in case we run out of time, for coming on the show, the Dakota Housing Network. Appreciate your time so much. Again, people, check out his blog, Econ70. If you need a speaker, reach out to him, bring him in. He loves North Dakota. He knows about North Dakota, can relate us to the rest of the world. In the last few minutes, Elliot, what is it that nobody's talking about that they should be talking about?
Wow. No one should be talking about. I'm not sure there's anything. I mean, people talk. I think the labor market gets some short shrift. People keep talking about the labor market being very lackluster and it's not really recovered and people don't feel good. But the number of jobs being produced every month now, month in, month out, with the exception of last month, has been spectacularly good for a long time. The labor market really is has been improving dramatically and is now in pretty good shape. The problem with the labor market, however, is wage growth. And it's been quite poor. It's not been nearly that problematic in North Dakota. Unemployment rates in North Dakota and South Dakota both are spectacularly low. The two of you and Nebraska are the lowest. But elsewhere, it's been very lackluster. And I'm hoping that as unemployment gets a little lower, below 5%, or gets close, we're now 5.5, we will start to see green shoots of employment wage growth. And that would be very, very good for our economy. It's one of the last pieces we need to get GDP moving again. So watch that number every month. Wage growth, employment growth, these are important numbers. Employment growth has been pretty good.
With the minute or two left, anything you want to say about the future of the elections? Since we're already almost in we're starting to announce the presidential campaigns.
Yeah,
I'm not running.
Jeez. You're not running. Everybody else seems to be. Yeah, Hillary Clinton clearly has got the Democratic nomination totally sewn up. My dark horse on the Republican side is Rubio. I think he's exciting. He's interesting. I'm not sure I like him personally. That's besides the point. He's quite low in the polls now, but he's my dark horse to surprise everybody. He's Hispanic. I think that would do. The Republicans cannot win unless they can get the Hispanic vote. They cannot. So I think he's a must if he can get through the primaries and raise enough money.
Well, yeah, okay.
All right.
And he brings Florida, which is critically important to him. So he's I think their best chance.
And Florida is a big swing state with it, because I mean there's so much connection with Florida now to the whole East Coast now with the people living
absolutely right. But the Republicans need to win. If the Republicans can't win Florida, there's almost no road to the White House exist given the Electoral College situation.
Elliot, again, Econ 70, check him out. Hire him as a speaker. Thank you so much for coming in here on the Dakota Housing Network. We will be back next week with Greg Larson.
No, Brian Ritter.
Brian Ritter is next week with the Bismarck Mandan Development Association.
Thanks, Elliot. Great talking to you.